Imagine living in a time where drinking a glass of milk could be like playing Russian roulette. Yeah, not a fun time to be living in if a milk was your favorite drink. Well, if we go back to the in the histories, not too long, I'm talking about less than 200 years ago. People were not able to trust the milk consumption 100%. For most of human histories, the food you ate came from immediate local stores and areas, and you would have to gobble it before it spoiled. But how could they be sure if their food was fresh or spoiled? Eating or drinking was a bit of guessing game that could potentially result in death or disease. Fortunately, today we can walk into the supermarket almost anywhere in the world and be confident that the food is there is safe to eat. We got this point thanks to many food preservation techniques that allow us safely to store and distribute the food. Pasteurization. Pasteurization is one of the discoveries that changed the way we consume, especially milk. So, we can now drink the milk with some peace of mind, but we might still die in other ways. Now, in this video, I want us to explore the what is pasteurization and why it has saved so many lives. Let's go back in time to the 1800s, when eating food was risky business and people believed that the germs can spontaneously appear in it. Louis Pasteur, a French chemist and microbiologist at the time, was fed up with ordeal. He was a part of a very small group of the people that believed fermentation occurred because of microorganisms taking hold, and he was determined to prove this by conducting a series of experiments. When the bacteria grow in wine, it can be sour, essentially turn the wine into vinegar. Pasteur discovered that if you eat the wine to the temperature of 60 to 100 degrees Celsius, you can kill the unwanted microorganisms without affecting the wine's taste. He conducted his first successful test in 1962 and later went on to patent this method that we now call pasteurization. Not the most appealing name, I know, but I guess it's cool to have your name associated with something that changed the people's life, right? Pasteur's experiments were also instrumental in establishing the germ theory. He managed to disprove the idea that infection is spontaneous. Yeah, we used to believe that the germs would magically appear from nowhere and spoil the things. He contradicted the idea by proving the microorganisms wouldn't develop without contamination. In one of the experiments, he used what became his famous swan-necked flask to demonstrate that if atmospheric air was excluded from the boiled infusion, then no living organisms would that if micro appear. Even after months of observation. However, if atmospheric dust were introduced, then the living microbes would appear within 2 to 3 days. Now let's go back to the pasteurization. So pasteurization is essentially a preservation technique, a physical preservation technique in which food is heated up to certain temperature to destroy the microorganisms and enzymes. But why? How does the pasteurization work? We know that the cooking kills yeast, mold and bacteria. So why can't cooking be alone used as a food preservation technique? Well, cooking destroys the most unwanted germs, but it alters the food composition. Pasteurization, on the other hand, destroys most yeast and mold in the food without causing substances in food change. Different foods are pasteurized in different ways, and the food's acidity can determine the time and temperature used in the process of pasteurization. For example, in orange juice, which is quite acidic, which is a pH of 3.5, we typically use high temperature of 95 to 90 degrees Celsius for 10 to 30 seconds. Since fruit juice usually has high acidity, microorganisms can't usually grow in it. Therefore, pasteurization is mainly done to inactivate unwanted enzymes from the fruit that might lead to the shorter shelf lives. In milk, most of commonly pasteurized food, we typically heat the milk around 62 degrees Celsius for 32 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. However, even with milk, there are different pasteurization methods. We also heat the milk to 72 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. And in ultra high treatment or UHT milk, we go even higher, heat the milk to 140 degrees Celsius for 2 to 3 seconds. But why we do that? Put simply, the hotter the temperature, longer the milk lasts. Milk pasteurized at 72 degrees Celsius will last 1 to 2 weeks longer than the milk pasteurized at 60 degrees Celsius. And UHT can be last for a month. Milk is the most common food that comes to mind when we think of pasteurization, right? Like just mentioned before. However, today we actually pasteurize many food products to ensure they are safe for consumption for last longer. For example, cheese. Some cheeses are made from unpasteurized raw milk and then aged to impart specific flavors. Have you ever tried cheddar, brie, camembert cheese? Well, they are pasteurized cheeses. Even though throughout much of Europe are allowed, albeit with some restrictions and specific laws. France is somewhat of powerhouse when it comes to producing raw milk cheeses, with many of the world's most popular cheese hailing from the region. However, even in France, the issue is starting to become controversial. These cheese carry pathogenic bacteria like Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli, which we can make you ill enough quantities or if you weaken immune system. In 2020, these cheeses are removed from the menu in places serving food to children, but experts claim that young people are 110 times more likely to become ill than adults. In the US, cheeses made from the unpasteurized milk are heavily restricted due to the Food and Drug Administration guidelines on accepted bacteria levels in food. Now, this one may surprise you. Did you know that we pasteurize honey? We do that to extend the shelf life rather than to make it safer. Then pasteurization process slow down the granulation, making the honey smoother for longer. Since honey has very low moisture content and high acidity, it's almost impossible for bacteria to thrive in honey. However, the pasteurization process is often accompanied by the filtration, which some people argue makes honey less nutrient rich. For example, processing honey this way often removes the pollen that is usually found in honey. Most countries don't have laws or requirements around pasteurizing honey. Now, if you have ever baked a cake, you have probably stuck your finger in the batter and got a taste of it before you threw the cake in the oven. Or got a bite of that raw cookie dough that can be so yummy, right? If you didn't feel sick after that, consider yourself lucky. Cake batter and cookie dough contain new eggs which can be unsafe. Beyond sneaking a few spoonfuls of cake batter, some recipes require raw eggs. Some bodybuilders also eat raw eggs to get the protein boost. Most people will be okay eating raw eggs, but the pregnant women, elder and other peoples and children with a weakened immune system may be safer eating pasteurized eggs. It's worth noting, however, that there is a safe trademark. While pasteurized eggs are safer, they tend to taste very different. They are also not ideal for the recipes that require to whip the egg whites to need stiff peaks, because the pasteurization process affects the ability of the proteins in the egg whites to make the melange worthy. Okay, those were just examples of things you have in your pantry and fridge that you've gone through the pasteurization. Now, every time you look at the milk carton, you know that it did not come straight from the cow. Someone actually had to discover a technique to kill the harmful germs and give you some peace of mind while you eat cereal in the morning. And that's the video. Thank you for.